Welcome, everybody. It's another episode of No Driving Gloves. We're somewhere around that 100 mark. This might even be the 100th episode. I don't know. We kind of gave up counting, and we just do this, try every week. It's an interesting night tonight. We kind of have the same description we always do. You have John, you have Derek, and we have a McPherson graduate also. Unfortunately, this week, like Will said, some of these episodes are going to be out of order, so maybe you've heard the episode, maybe you're not, but Will's getting ready for some big event. I can't remember what, and getting the Rocket Racing Camaro set up and tuned in and dialed, and so he can't be with us tonight, but we have somebody that started McPherson a year after Will and I and hung around a few years after us and has kind of built himself a pretty decent career in the automotive industry. Adam Martin. First, we'll do what we normally do. Anybody doing anything exciting this week or anything coming up that we want to touch on? Me, I'm still my boring life, trying to get the business started and playing some car games of my own, trying to figure out how to become debt-free here in the next couple of weeks.
Well, I guess that depends on when you release this episode, John. So depending on where we fall in the lineup here, obviously on the last episode or maybe the next episode or whichever episode, I talked about buying a new vehicle for the private collection and been working on that. It's a 1919 Chevrolet 490 Touring. And actually about, 20 minutes before half hour before recording this episode. The engine was seized when I purchased the car. It is no longer seized and it is freely rotating. So that was exciting. And for anybody that's listening, we're recording this the week before Labor Day. At work, we are celebrating the 25th anniversary of the National Corvette Museum with about 10,000 of our closest Corvette friends. If anyone's in the Bowling Green area, the traffic is a little rough right now. So far, it's been a blast. It's the first day. Going back tomorrow for the second, and we're just going to have a good time celebrating 25 years of the museum. So my week's been pretty hectic, John.
So, Adam, you up to anything exciting or amazing that there's a quick story since we don't want a huge background, or you got any car projects going on? Things are...
Of course. What car guy doesn't have a car project going on, or at least a short list of things they'd like to get to? And thanks for inviting me to stand in Will's shoes for tonight's episode. It's an honor. And for me, I'm fresh off a couple of weeks of travel, being in Monterey for the annual Car Week and the Pebble Beach Concours, which is sort of the stratosphere in the automotive world. And to be honest, I'm back in New Orleans, and tomorrow night in my little town where I live of Covington, there is the final Friday of the month little block party. And moving to Louisiana, I have quickly learned that this town really loves getting together and having a celebration, and what better time to do that than a Friday night? So our little town closes down Main Street, and all the car guys show up and park their cars on Main Street. The police are there to close things down. The bars and restaurants and art galleries are open, and it's just this really fun street party. So that's tomorrow night, and I have the privilege of driving my father-in-law has said that the little Mini Cooper needs some exercise, so he's got a 67 Mini that we'll take out and bring over to the block party, hang out with some car guys and see some customers, come back to reality off of that big Pebble Beach high. So looking forward to that.
And that Pebble Beach high is one of the reasons I reached out to you. I'm laying around, I'll be honest, and this is probably a horrible thought for many of our listeners, but I'm laying around in bed the other night and surfing Facebook, and it's about midnight. All of a sudden, I'm scrolling, and somebody's got a live feed from Monterey and the RM auction. And I go, ooh, this is cool. I want to see this car. And so I did a little bit of watching, and again, depending on how these episodes come out, everything should be out in order. And so if you've listened in order, you're good. But the Type 64, quote, Porsche, unquote, was going across the block. I don't know how to really address that car. And Adam was in the room with that. I don't know how many of our listeners have actually read or seen what happened or have discussed. I know I've put a little bit on our social media about it. I know Bloomberg's reported on it. Spike Ferriston, Spike's Car Radio's definitely reported on it. I think, some of the business channels have. RM did a pretty good job of not reporting on it. And Adam, do you want to give a little rundown of what happened that night and kind of what the take is? As I've said, the press has said one thing, but it's always nice to have somebody's in the room, because I heard, people booed and walked out of the room, and it just was detrimental to even the remainder of the evening for the auction. What was what did you observe? What did you see? And literally, and probably the most important thing is, what did you hear?
Sure. Yes, this was a Monterey like no other in many regards. I've been going to Monterey for at least 18 years now that I can count. It's an automotive event that I look forward to year over year. I mean, it really is the epicenter on many levels, from Concours de Lemons to the Concours d'Elegance at the 18th Fairway at Pebble Beach. It is where I can really exercise my wholehearted automotive enthusiasm to race cars, to the brass era, to sports cars, and then you've got the elegant stuff that shows up at the Quail or at Pebble. And of course, you have the auctions that support all of those automotive events during the day, whether it be RM Sotheby's or Gooding or Mecum. Worldwide Group is there, Russo and Steele are there. It's really a lot of fun. So for me, I try to get everywhere I can on the peninsula to try to soak it all up, because it's so intense and so exciting. And, it's like Christmas Day every day for about a week for me out there. Heading into RM Sotheby's Saturday night, I mean, it is prime time. It is just like, every other year or every other major Concours weekend, like Amelia Island or even in Scottsdale for the auction week there. Timing is everything. And so there are key times in the auction schedule, where they're going to kind of benchmark these cars throughout the lineup of vehicles being sold that night. And they staged this Type 64 to be the sort of the bookend or the hero car for Saturday night. Rightfully so. They've spent a lot of money to market, to advertise it. It's certainly a significant car in automotive history. It's got a lot of famous people touching it. It's got a famous name on it. There's lots of public opinion. Getting to the evening, it was like many other RM Sotheby's nights, Friday night or Saturday night. If you've never been to Monterey, it's at the Monterey Plaza Convention Center. I think that's what it's called. Have all the auction cars outside, out front of the Portola Plaza Hotel. Any Joe Public on the street can walk by, and there's a fence that kind of keeps you away, keeps your greasy mitts off the cars. It's exciting. There are lights. The auctioneer's voice is pumped outside. All the cars are kind of queuing in and getting ready to go into the ballroom. And then after they're sold, they drive out of the ballroom. So being outside of the Portola Plaza for the RM Sotheby's sales is exciting by itself, and it's totally free. And you get to see all the best cars coming and going out of the auction. So, there was that normal excitement of the auction outside taking place. And then as you make your way into the auction room, you need to be a registered bidder or have paid your fee, to buy basically a seat in the room or a place to stand at this point, because during the course of the week, all the other auctions have sort of stopped for the day, and it's just the larger auctions, RM and Gooding in the evenings. And, it's standing room only. And I think RM said they had like 1,400 registered bidders for this sale. I don't know the ballroom could hold 1,400 people. It might be closer to 500. I'm just kind of ballparking it. But everyone squeezes into the ballroom. There's only X amount of seats, and then everyone else is standing in the back of the room and along the sides. So it's extremely crowded, but that's kind of the buzz. That is the feeling, of, kind of what adds excitement, to the frenzy of the auction room, and to be in the room at the time the car sells. Like many auctions, these premium feature cars are now having these wonderful videos made, sort of sizzle reels and commercials for cars. What RM and Sotheby's did is they played a little 30 seconds, wonderful sizzle reel about the vehicle that kind of primes the the audience, and hopefully adds a little momentum into the vehicle to stimulate some bidding. And then the auctioneer welcomes the car to the stage, and it drives in, all by itself. It's remarkably quiet. I've certainly heard side pipe, Cobras drive in. I've heard race cars. I've seen all kinds of stuff drive in. And when they rev the motor, it certainly, gets everyone's attention and usually a round of applause. But this little Type 64 just kind of like putters right in and parks right on the stage. There was some applause and some oohs and ahs from the audience coming in. I was about the third row up, kind of in the middle of the room, having worked my way up through the audience and found some open seats because I knew this was going to be an important sale. So I wanted to be as close as I could without, kneeling at the front of the stage and being shushed away. At this point, auction, everyone's there. Everyone's got their phones up. Everyone is excited. The car's there. The auctioneer's talking about it. And the bidding opens. They really didn't, with many auctions, some of these premium or these important cars, they don't even mention a reserve or even provide like a price range. John, you probably see in catalogs where they provide like a range estimate, right? Yeah. Right. So with this car, they just left it wide open, purchase available upon request kind of thing. The auctioneer was very excited to get it going, opened the bidding. I actually shot this live on my phone, did that Facebook Messenger live or the Instagram live, which you saw. I didn't know how important it was going to be to maybe capture the screen, the overhead screen that shows the bidding increments behind the auctioneer and behind the stage, behind the car. So I'm trying to hold my phone up, and watch the auctioneer and to watch the car and to watch the screen and then to pan the room. I didn't, I wish I would have captured some more, but I'm glad I captured it because I rewatched it today a couple of times and I timed the whole process because for me being in the room, it felt like an eternity. But now that I've rewatched it and have timed it, it's amazing how it can get blown out of proportion. So what I'm speaking to is the auctioneer, announces the car, opens the bidding. He instantly asks for, 13 million. And the audience is like, ooh, and ah, and oh my goodness. And, but what the auctioneer doesn't know is that behind him on the screen, the number 30 million, 30 was typed up on the screen. And you hear the auctioneer say, yes, asking for 30 or 13. For those of you who are not there in the room or watched the video, the auctioneer is from Ireland, Scotland. It's not English, but it is that dialect, and forgive me for not knowing exactly. But his accent was strong enough that it was hard to discern, especially in a microphone in a full ballroom with speakers everywhere. I mean, kudos to them. The audio is pretty good. Enunciating his numbers, it could be improved upon. So the auctioneer goes at 13. You hear him, call for 13. He gets a bid. He rolls into 13, looking for 13 and a half. And so you hear him say 13,500, but then all of a sudden he says 14. And on the board behind him shows 40 million. And the auction room is now like standing on their feet. Only the people in the front rows are sitting down. Everybody else is standing up. Their phones are in their hand, photos, videos are going, and I think I'm getting hairs on my goosebumps just talking about it, but like everybody in the room just got electrified. I mean, they're up on their feet. They were excited. This was just a $10 million bump, right? An auction bid. And then you hear the auctioneer, he's calling 14, you hear 14.5, whether you choose to or not. In the video, I rewatched it and he does say 5. He asks for 500,000 and all of a sudden he gets 15 and 50 million gets put on the board. And the auction room is, on their tippy toes. Everyone is interested and like momentum is building. The electricity is building. This is kind of like I've never been to a major title boxing match, but this is exciting. People are cheering for it. And then, now the audience is getting louder. So it's even harder to hear what the auctioneer is saying. And of course he's got his, auctioneer dribble and he is working the phone bidders and there's about 4 or 5 RM staff members on the phones. And you can't tell if anyone's bidding in the auction audience because, everyone's standing up with their arms in the air holding up their phones. So I don't know what the bid spotters were doing or what the auctioneer can see, but it had to have been challenging. And so, for me, in being in the room, whether you heard the auctioneer call like 14 and a half, and then when it went to 15 and you heard him call 15.5 and then he got to 60 and then the screen shows 60 million. I mean, it wasn't registering. All you saw in the matter of seconds was that the screen said 30 million and then all of a sudden it said 40 million and the audience is cheering, and now it says 50 million and the audience is cheering louder. And I mean, it gets all the way up to 70 million, and the room is losing their mind. I mean, it is gangbusters, and this far surpassed the Ferrari GTO that sold last year. Anything else that I have ever seen in public, I've never seen $10 million bid increments at a car auction before. So this is monumental. And then
let's touch on that GTO. This at 70 million, we're almost 20 to 25 million dollars higher than anything's ever been paid at auction before for any automobile. There might be private sales for more money or similar money, but this is 70 million is the highest amount ever bid for a car at public auction. And so we can understand why there's a little bit of fever and a historic moment there.
Absolutely. There's a lot of I work with a lot of car collectors. I think many savvy enthusiasts go to Monterey almost expect to pay a little bit of a premium because it's a global market when you go to buy a car at an auction in Monterey. Whether you're in the room or calling on the phone or bidding online, it is a world currency sort of exchange here on the Monterey Peninsula. And so for it to go to 70 million was astonishing. I know RM Sotheby's did a great job of marketing the car. They did a video on it that was released early. Their press releases were good. The car certainly has a unique history. It's got provenance, however you interpret it. It certainly deserved this attention. I don't think anybody in the room thought it would go that high, in my opinion. 20, 30 million, that I heard some rumors or rumblings of people sitting around me that is kind of what they thought it would go for. But for it to just skyrocket to 70 million, and I actually used the stopwatch and clocked it, and based on what I start and stopped it, it was about 1 minute and 10 seconds from when the auctioneer started until the auctioneer basically called timeout. When he realized that the board behind him or on the screen was showing 70 million, he called a timeout and said, "No, I need to correct this. I'm speaking. The current bid is 17 million." And so that was about 1 minute and 10 seconds into this. If you put yourself in the room, here's this amazing car. It rolls onto the stage, and the bidding opens, and it's 30 million. It's 40 million, 50 million. This is all a matter of less than a minute. I mean, less than the time you brush your teeth. I mean, this is just skyrocketed. So for you to multitask and think about, okay, what am I seeing on the screen versus did I hear the auctioneer call for 500? Because that doesn't make sense if he's taking $10 million bid increments. And I think a lot of listeners, and I know myself included, have probably been to auctions where the auctioneer has called a timeout and clarified who had the high bid, or if there was an error. You see it on live auctions, and so I'm glad they did it. It might be an Achilles heel. It may be, this could be a camel, the straw that breaks the camel's back, because it's such a significant car. RM Sotheby's is a very significant auction company, and it's going to be interesting to continue to read and see what the public opinion is on the result of this. To the auctioneer's credit, he caught it, basically rewound down or actually the auctioneer's mind, he was at 17 million. They readjusted the screen numbers to 17 million. I actually kept filming and ran my stopwatch today, and the auctioneer was working for 17 million for the next 3 minutes and 55 seconds before he hammered it as a no sale. And so this entire process was 5 minutes and 5 seconds, based on my timing from the film that I shot. So this is a lot of action, a lot of information to happen in 5 minutes, let alone approximately 1 minute, 10 seconds that, got out of whack before they could reel it back in.
Do you think that had some sort of effect? I mean, we're talking, and even if we give the benefit of the doubt, we had people bidding in the million, $500,000 increments, 13, 13, 5, 14, 14, 5, 15, 15, 5, 16, 16, 5, 17. And we got to 17, and then the board saying 70, and we correct the board, and we just literally spent, and we just watched a car go up in or whatever bid price, $1 million a second. And all of a sudden it's brought back down to $250,000 a second. And it did it deflate the room? Do you think it had impact? Because like you said, he tried for almost 4 minutes, which in auction terms is an eternity. Barrett Jackson runs cars 2 to 3 minutes. Nothing stays on the block more than 3 minutes. And he tried for 4 minutes beyond, so almost 5 minutes on the block to try to go from 17.
Right.
Even
absolutely.
17 and a half.
The room, when the auctioneer, called timeout and corrected the screen, the temperature in the room changed. I mean, it went from an emotional high. This is an unstoppable freight train. It literally crashed. I mean, the room, everyone, public opinion turned 180 degrees, and there was moans, groans, there was booing. I have it on video. Everyone was distraught and in disbelief. Like, wait, what a minute? Like, we just went from 30 to 70 million in less than a minute, and now you're taking it all back. Like, don't do this to me. I think people felt victimized, and I was astonished. I mean, I'm still sort of in disbelief that happened, and it is certainly a mistake wherever the blame lies. But the room, I mean, Joe Public consumer enthusiast who was in the room was just at the top of the mountain, and now they got pushed off. I mean, it was upsetting, and it changed the mood dramatically. I mean, everyone sat down. Lots of people who were standing in the back left. And then as they proceeded for the next 4 minutes to try to sell the car at 17, I mean, there was just murmurings all over the auction room. I mean, it was total disrespect. If you're giving a speech in the front of the room and this was your audience, you would just feel ashamed because it was just disrespectful. But the circumstances may or may not have dictated it, but it was not a friendly crowd. No one threw beer bottles or popcorn at the front of the room, but it was probably close. And the auctioneer tried for the next 4 minutes to get 17, or maybe he had 17 and he tried to get another bid. And then at the end of it all, it did not sell and they had to pass on the car. Anyone who goes to an auction, they know if it doesn't sell, I mean, maybe it never had real money in the first place, or maybe the car didn't reserve. I mean, we don't know, and that's at the auction house's, I guess, prerogative to disclose. And in this case, for this car, they didn't have to. So it definitely deflated the room. Like many times with these sort of milestone or hero cars in the course of an evening, the room tends to clear out, but this was the last major car of the night. I would say at least, a third of the room kind of picked up and walked off. And there were open seats in the room by the time, I left probably 10 cars later after this car sold. So it definitely took the momentum out of the room, which hurts performance for the auction for the rest of the night. It certainly lowers, in my opinion, the extra bidders that you have potential from. Of course, the people that are in the room are there to buy a particular car or to bid on a particular car. They'll stick through anything. But the other sort of enthusiasts who occupy seats and are curious about cars and may bid on something if the price is right, I think they got up and left. It was definitely a buzzkill.
Yeah, I theorized in it, and we're talking, the pre-auction estimates I heard on that car were 22 million, maybe 25, and a lot of controversy behind it. And I guess my auction experience, and I know, Adam, you've attended a lot more auctions than I have, people spending that kind of money, unless it's Barrett Jackson on a Saturday in January, aren't in the crowd. They're the phone bidders. And my theory is if I'm a phone bidder and I've got, I've decided I'm spending 22, 25 on this car. As soon as that thing hits 50, I'm hanging up. What's the odds of it coming back down to my price range? And I would just wonder if they lost some of those phone bidders or some of the serious buyers. I mean, when you get into the rules of an auction, there's a reason the term chandelier bidder exists, and all the auction catalogs and all the auction contracts state that, the house can bid up to reserve price. So things like that. So maybe 17 million was real in the room, maybe 17 million wasn't. But I just would have to think that there was probably somebody at one point in the room or on the phone or on the internet that was going to be that 20 or 22 million dollar bid. And so to me it hurt it at that sale. That's my personal opinion, not reflecting on you, not reflecting on Derek, not reflecting on RM or anybody. But what I think is going to be interesting is, where does the car go to next? Does RM put this at another big event? Do they put it at a European event? I mean, it's a car, it's a story, and I allude to it a lot on the episodes. Watch American Pickers. Stories sell. This just adds, this is a controversial car to begin with, whether or not it's a Porsche, whether or not it's real, how much of it's original. Now it's got an auction, a very unique auction story behind it. In the long term, I don't think it hurts this car. It just adds to the car and might give an opportunity for RM to say, okay, to the owner or whatever consortium controls the car, let's run it again, and it'll be a lot clearer, and we're going to get a lot more press about it. So I don't, as the car owner, I don't know if I'm upset it didn't sell at Monterey, unless, of course, I, had a penthouse in New York I was going to pay for with the proceeds. But what's your thinking on it? Do you think this hurts the car? Do you think this helps the car? Do you think this hurt RM? Do you think this helps RM? I'm a firm believer in any publicity is good publicity. Just depends how you spin it. And I think RM's done its job of spinning.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think any publicity is good publicity. And we have to kind of zoom out from a macro level over the lifespan of this automobile. This is another milestone in its history. I think you and I might have some similar stories when it comes to consulting with car collectors, and it is important for automobiles to have exposure and to be photographed and to be mentioned, from a appreciation standpoint. If you have a rare one-off car that maybe won a particular race or is driven by someone, or it's a one-off coach built, it certainly helps when that car is seen in a magazine, or if it's photographed, or if it gets debuted at a certain car show or concours. I mean, that is just great investment management. The fact that it's an automobile, kind of, it's a head scratcher. Museums do this by having, art galleries and expositions, and, King Tut's tomb's been around the world a few times, I think, already. So it certainly helps. And I know RM's, getting back to your question about it's the auction house's job to have qualified bidders and interested bidders lined up for every car. So I have to believe that RM did their due diligence, and they had real money or real bidders on the phones or in the room or bidding online, ready for this car. And, they demonstrated that they weren't willing to spend that much money, and 17 wasn't going to sell the car that day. That's okay. There were lots of other important cars that did not sell this past, the week ago in Monterey that we're not talking about. And every auction company has a couple of cars that doesn't sell, if not a few more. So it's just timing, right time, wrong time, maybe for this particular car. But long term, this is just one more page in the book of history for this car. And time will tell if it adds value. If it doesn't, I think at the end of the day, all car guys should be buying and enjoying cars that make them happy and fulfill them in whatever reason they're looking to achieve. This certainly has the DNA of Porsche. It's unarguable. What raises the question for me and a lot of my peers is, why hasn't Porsche AG purchased the car? Why is it not in their permanent collection? Why is this not sold privately before coming to a public auction? I mean, there's a lot of unanswered questions that I think myself and Joe Public, may not ever get answers to. And there's only a few people close to this car who might know the real answer. And maybe that comes out, 5 or 10 or 50 years from now in a new book, the untold stories. And then at that point in time, this car is acknowledged and sells publicly. So there's lots of arguments, but you've been to enough car auctions. You see this carousel goes around and around. I think it certainly helps build the story for the car, whether you like it or not. We'll be talking about it for many years, and I think every Porsche enthusiast will be remembering that day, and it goes down in their notebooks for future conversations. It was monumental. I'll give it that.
I think we've touched on the 64 quite extensively in this episode. Derek's been very quiet because.
Well, wait. I want to ask Adam a question. I'm trying to keep personal opinions out of this somewhat. Did you pick up on any conversations in the room? And John alluded to it a little bit, but I don't think you touched on it much. Kind of about RM's Sotheby's reputation going forward after this blunder, mainly because in knowing the two auction houses, RM and Sotheby's, now of course joined RM Sotheby's, kind of group of those. So they've both had blunders in their past as individual auction houses before becoming RM Sotheby's. I mean, was there any commentary in the audience that you heard, or anything you've heard after the fact that it's just anything along the lines of just another messed up auction by RM or Sotheby's or RM Sotheby's? I'm curious because I know some of the history of both companies. Again, trying to keep personal opinions, things out of this, but I'm just curious if you heard anything that night or anything, after the auction the next day, anything like that.
Sure, I can appreciate that. In the moment, like many things, you have to sort of manage your emotional response to, it's sort of this, as I described, the roller coaster, climbing to the top of the mountain and then kind of being pushed off. There were a lot of people sort of in disbelief. The comments, sort of by the people sitting around me, and as I heard later in the evening, they were just shaking their head like, I can't believe, this happened. Rumors of is this like that Banksy thing with the self, destroying artwork, and this is supposed to be a joke, and were they trying to be funny? I mean, I heard some of those remarks. But I genuinely believe this was just a simple mistake between what the auctioneer was intending and somehow the disconnect with the computer system that puts the number on the screen. I mean, I've been to enough auctions that technical difficulties are a real thing, and you do have to kind of call time out. And we wish everything ran as perfectly as it can every time, but things like this do happen. And I think in the moment, people were disenfranchised. They were, disillusioned. They were upset. But I think, generally speaking, the next day, at the concours field and the people that I've talked to afterwards, it's just a speed bump in, the road of life. It's just another business is just trying to move along. They had a mistake. They corrected it. In the moment, it was terrible, but it's not the end of the world. I don't believe this is going to hurt RM Sotheby's going forward. I mean, I go way back, not from the beginning with RM, but certainly since 2003 and 4, I've been traveling essentially on the the same circuit as RM Auctions and now RM Sotheby's has. So I know a lot of the staff, and I call them friends. And I know they have good interest, and I think this is just one of those just unfortunate incidents that was with a very significant car. So it's definitely garnering a lot of spotlight and a lot of attention. I know the RM Sotheby's sort of train is moving forward, and they've got auctions lined up, and they're marketing and looking forward to their future auctions. And this will be discussed and talked about. I think people who buy at auctions know the risks. I hope they're savvy enough to ask good questions of people who've gone to auctions and buy at auctions before. And I mean, it really is buyer beware. So the one car, the one of one example that you want is only available through an auction. You've got to go there to buy it, or call in. And, RM Sotheby's isn't the only auction company to have issues. I mean, I've certainly been to other auction companies. I'm not sure if you guys remember, but, Russo and Steele had their tents blow over in Scottsdale. I was there as a Haggerty employee at the time, and doing insurance work. And that was Mother Nature at her finest. And, Russo and Steele did a fine job recovering, and they're celebrating 20 years next year. So I think auction companies, especially in the car world, are doing their best. And, it's unfortunate that this happened on such a significant car, but in the long run, I think we'll all move forward, and, they're still going to sell cars, and people are still going to consign with them. You could argue, how successful they'll be, or are they going to get 10% fewer consignments? Are their reserves going to go down? That's so far in the minutia. I don't think we'll know those details. Only the RM team will.
Say, wow, what was supposed to be a 10-minute conversation, we really got in depth in. We're about 35, 40 minutes into this, and I think there's a lot of interesting points and thoughts, and just a little bit. It's a fun topic, and say blunders or happenings. Instead of using the words blunders, happenings like this don't happen every day in the collector car world, or at least don't happen on this scale. Like Adam said, I have seen them bring back bids and correct bids, but usually it's not on a $15 or $20 million car. It's on a $30,000 GTO.
Yeah, absolutely.
Things like that.
And usually you don't reduce it by like 30 million. That's
that Corvette math. That's like 53 million. We reduced it.
It certainly was an automotive happening, and it will sort of benchmark, I think, the times. If you want to get real high level, you look at the overall performance of the auctions this past week in Monterey. Their numbers were down compared to the 2008 equivalent week. So, what is the overall market sentiment? You could tie a lot of things into this and symbolism about the significance of this car. What I'm here to say is that the automotive action on the peninsula, Monterey Peninsula, was still exciting and exceptional. Enthusiasts were out driving cars, showing at car shows. There's more and more young people on street corners taking pictures. I mean, this automotive paparazzi, I'm not sure if you guys have talked about it before, but me as a car guy, sort of concerned about the next generation of automotive enthusiasts and what is their gateway into the automobile world. Young boys and girls, 10, 12, 13, 15, 20-year-olds, I see all the ages. They're on street corners taking pictures of stuff, and they've got a social media presence. They've got Instagram accounts, and they're happy to take photos of stuff. I wasn't taking pictures of cars. I was in the garage working on cars. But if it takes, a young person to see a Bugatti Veyron go by and to get them excited and for them to take out their phone, take a picture and post it, then I think the future of the automotive hobby is going to be just fine. It'll certainly evolve and change, but I think we're building enthusiasts. And as I looked at the demographics in the room that night at RM Sotheby's with that Type 64, I mean, there there was a huge range of ages. I mean, I saw, young kids holding mom and dad's hand walking down the auction aisle to find their seats. And I saw, the traditional 60, 70-year-olds that, are there consistently, buying, large cars and stuff. So the overall, I feel the hobby is still, our core enthusiast group is there, enthusiastic and excited about cars. It just wasn't packed to the gills as it usually has been over the last, probably 10 years. So
let's saunter off of the RM and the Type 64 and some of that auction stuff, and kind of enjoyed having you as your commentary here, Adam, and I'm sure I want to have you back on the show to kind of chat cars with excuse me, Derek and I sometime. We're, about 42 minutes, 41 minutes, depending what editing does, into this episode. You kind of, and I'm going to, I guess, take creative license here because I'm the host and it's my show. You kind of operate
You said it was our show.
No. Yes, it's our show. That's what she said. You kind of operate a similar business to what I do in some of the automotive consulting and advising, but you have a much more extensive background in insurance, and that's, I think, a bulk of what you want to do. And would you want to tell us a little bit about what your day job is and how you fit into this automotive collector car world is, and potentially some of what either your business does and what some of the goals of your business are? Because I think over the years as we've talked, I kind of get an idea of what you want to do, but let's hear it from you and get Derek to answer some questions in that. And I don't want to get too deep into insurance and stated value and any of that. We're going to do an insurance episode, and we'll probably have to have you on either as a commentator or maybe even a moderator. But go ahead and tell me a little bit about Martin International and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, John. Yeah, Martin International is my insurance agency, and we focus on car collectors at its core. Myself, I'm a car enthusiast, restorer. Like you mentioned in the opening, I'm a McPherson College graduate, and I'm grateful for that automotive experience, and it kind of catapulted me into this great sort of automotive world. And from my days at McPherson College, I transitioned over to Hagerty Insurance, where I worked with Hagerty for 10 years with McKeel and a number of other amazing people. And I ran their private client services department and later helped build and develop the Hagerty Price Guide and the valuation tools and the Vindicator, which is a free public service that Hagerty continues to offer today. So I'm a hands-on car guy. I still have the first car I ever bought, my 68 Camaro. I still work on that in the garage and enjoy that. So I take care of car collectors because I share their same passion and their same skin knuckles, and I have a penchant for details and data and information, and that comes to be very important when it comes to looking at insurance paperwork and looking after car collections. So the core of my business with insurance starts with the car collection, but being an independent agent, I offer many other lines of insurance. So I take care of car collectors in their homes, their boats, their watch collections, their tools, even their airplanes and their horse ranches. It doesn't matter. Once you find someone you like working with, you strike up that rapport, and I bring value to that car collector by looking after all of their insurance. It's really nice to be able to package that together and be that advisor to them, looking after all of their insurances. So I also look after restoration shops and classic car dealerships. I don't want to leave them out because they need car collectors, and just as much as car collectors need a great restoration shop, and that goes back to our background coming from McPherson College. So I like to be a conduit and bring great people together and provide those introductions, because I feel that that further improves the hobby. It keeps it going together. And as our friend Jay Leno says, like, if you don't drive it, you don't break it. If you don't break it, you don't know how to fix it. And it's the tools, the techniques, the equipment, the parts that I want to make sure we keep driving them, keep breaking them, keep fixing them, so this hobby can perpetuate, because these old cars are meant to be rebuilt. And if they do have an accident, I'm there to kind of catch you, pick up the pieces with the insurance, and help you get that car put back together. So that's my day job. That's what I like doing. I get to work with people all across the country and internationally. People are shipping their cars to the U.S. to do driving tours. You need insurance to do that. If you want to ship your car overseas and do Goodwood, if you want to do the Mille, if you want to go to Australia, there's all kinds of special insurance you need to have for that. So I'm your go-to guy when it comes to doing anything fun with your classic car on the insurance side of things.
And I kind of liked it when you said, because this is how I'll get us to our next episode, when you were referring to Leno, and if you don't drive it, you don't break it. If you don't break it, you don't know how to fix it. And that's what Derek gets into. And as Derek alluded earlier, that's what he enjoys, and trying to get these cars set up for certain events in his future. And, unfortunately, in my case, if they break, I sell them. But I want to say, and this is something for Derek to think about, because Derek didn't meet you. Let's see here. Derek probably met you about an hour and 15 minutes ago for the first time by voice, other than a passing at a conference a few years ago. There's an old story I remember about you, and I don't know if I was still in school or I just got out of school, and I don't know who told it to me. But you were on a tour with a group of guys, and I can't even remember what type of cars, but it was in Florida, and you got going along, and somebody's car broke down, and it probably happens to you all the time. And you helped them rebuild their axle or something on the side of the road so they can complete the tour and that. And that sounds a lot like Derek, and even sounds a lot like Will, and and that you've done these tours and participated in these, good reputable tours and things like that. And you're really you're like me and have the clean, I would say polo shirt and slacks kind of day job, not necessarily suit and tie, but you're beyond me and a little bit into that Derek thing where you really like to get down and dirty too, and really get involved. Is that a made-up story I have about you, or is that
no? That's spot on. In fact, I can think of 3 stories off the top of my head where I've been on a rally and stuff breaks, and it's you got to help, right? Everyone's got to finish. Everyone needs to get to the next spot or to get somewhere safe. And I was fortunate enough to be able to do the Pebble Beach Motoring Classic, which is a rally from Seattle down to Monterey, just prior to Pebble Beach. It's an event that's in conjunction with it. And I was there with a client, and I pinched myself even thinking about it, but we got to drive a Model J Duesenberg touring car all the way down 1,500 miles from Seattle down to Monterey. You know this. I interned for Randy Ema, who is one of the foremost experts on Duesenbergs. So it was almost serendipitous that here I am many years later driving in a Duesenberg from Seattle down to Monterey, and we just happened to shear off the pinion gear off of the drive shaft. When's the last time that's happened to anybody, let alone in a Duesenberg? And so thankfully there was another gentleman on the rally who was another Duesenberg enthusiast. His place happened to be on the route that we were driving. It was several, days and miles ahead of where we were when we broke, but we managed to get the broken car and ourselves down to his shop, and we basically swapped differentials or third members out of one Duesenberg into this other Duesenberg so we could finish the rally. And we did. And, it was one of those, overcome adversity and, kind of a bonding moment with my client, the driver, and a few other technicians that were, restoration guys that were on the rally and stuff. So we love sharing that story, and the whole drive by itself was fantastic. But then to have this, obstacle to overcome together and solve and still finish, with the rest of the group was monumental. So that was one of the many exciting moments of what's already a great experience kind of quickly turns south. You break down and, oh, woe was me. And then you scratch your head and go, okay, how do I fix this? Because we've got to finish. I'm not going to tuck the tail to my legs. Let's figure this out. And, we got to it. So
it worked out well, and now it's a great story.
Yeah, Derek had a reaction to your Randy Ema statement, but before I let him go on that, I just have a quick question. So when you break this Duesenberg down on this tour, do you like flatbed it, or do you just chain tow it? Do you just wrap a chain around another Duesenberg's bumper and drag it the rest of the way to the guy's shop?
That's a scary picture to think about, but no, in this particular instance, given our location and all these, reliable and inner city, professional enclosed transporters going from Seattle down to Monterey, we were able to basically grab an open spot on one of these trailers just by pure luck. And they got us from where we broke down to this repair shop, this collector's, collection where he had a hoist, where he had tools, where he had a spare Duesenberg that he wasn't using that we could pull the diff out of. So the stars truly aligned in order for us to kind of pull this off, and it worked out quite well, and we finished.
Yes. Spare Duesenberg that you're not using. First world problems, right?
That's one of my biggest problems is my spare Duesenberg I'm not using. Just, one of these days, I might use it.
It's just a good redundancy system, right? I mean, if you're going to have one Corvette, you might as well have two, that way you're never without. So
that is true. Yeah, no, John, of course, Adam, John and I are also kind of staring at each other blankly on video here. Unfortunately, for some reason, John likes to do that. I think it's to keep me and Will in check when we're actually all three together. But yeah, I had a bit of a reaction to you throwing out been an intern for Randy Ema. Randy Ema's been a friend for quite a few years. Yeah, it kind of shocked me to hear you had interned with Randy, and he's a great guy. And actually in the pre-show, and most of our listeners know, I mentioned I have that 1923 Peerless V8. And that is the reason I have that car is due to Randy Ema. He is a good friend and someone who actually aided in the acquisition of that car for my private collection. So it's always great to hear other people that have had the opportunity to know Randy and get to work around.
Oh, that's just outstanding. It just goes to show how incredible the automotive world is, and good people finding good people and finding good cars. So I'm so glad to hear that you've got a fun connection to Randy. I just saw him a week ago in Monterey and stuff. So he and Cecil, one of his guys, are up there. So it's so fascinating, so cool.
Okay, we've got two hosts that know Randy. When's he guesting on the show?
Wait, John, did you catch the part where Adam said it's good that, good to know that good people find each other? See, Randy's one of those good people, and there's a reason you probably don't know him, but Adam and I do. So.
Oh, good people, not great people. I understand now.
That's a stretch.
Oh, I love it.
Do we have another story we want to hit? Because we're right about that 60-minute mark and kind of like to wrap it up.
I would say...
No, I mean,
Go ahead, Dick.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Adam.
I was going to ramble on just, my opinions on like rally and touring and using cars, if that's appropriate at this time. Or if you want to save it.
No, we don't use cars.
Yeah, I don't use them.
But John doesn't use his cars.
Yeah, go ahead. We can go a little bit long. Let's ramble, and I'm sure Derek will have some input on this. We haven't had a lot of speaking.
All right. Well,
this episode.
It's because I'm anxious to get back in the garage and get working on my car.
I will say one of the other interesting things I noticed about the Monterey Week in general were all of the automotive driving tours that have, started in various cities and then converged on the Monterey Peninsula. So they, in addition to the Pebble Beach Motoring Classic, which are cars eligible to show on the Pebble Beach lawn, mostly European sports car classics and things of that nature. But there was the Fuel Run. There actually was a Seattle to Monterey run full of other exotic sports cars. And then I don't recognize, there's a few other stickers on the sides of doors of car groups that had driven in. And that's what I find most enjoyable about the car collecting hobby is actually getting out and using your cars. I think we all enjoy going to a car show or a concours, but I'm not the type to sit in a lawn chair behind a car and talk to people. I'm rather more proactive and find great enjoyment about driving our cars and sharing them with others. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to do the Colorado Grand and the Copper State 1000 and the Mille Miglia and London to Brighton, and there's nothing for me more fun to share it with other people, whether it's at the gas station and letting that curious kid come over and sit in the car and ask you questions and take their picture. And I'm not hyper protective of all my stuff. Like I don't want you to scratch it intentionally, but things happen, and hey, that's what you got insurance for. So for me, the hobby is going to perpetuate itself, and I think we will find future value from cars that we can do something with, whether it's a race car at a private racetrack or if it's a car that is, has the latest Mr. Fusion, from Back to the Future, so it can run on tomorrow's roads. But I'm a big believer in getting cars out and using them and sharing them to maintain, positive public opinion for old cars on roads. But as well, as I said before, that if you got to drive them because you got to break them, because you know how to fix them, and we need parts for them, and it just helps our sort of automotive economy keep rolling forward and growing healthier and healthier year over year. So I'm sure both you guys like driving your cars, and you probably get together with some of your friends, I hope, and go cruising around.
Friends?
I'm going to surprise everybody and say, I do.
You don't have a car to drive, John. You just go beg for rides.
Yeah, but my newer under warranty stuff.
No, what I was going to say earlier, and I want to jump in right now, Adam, not meaning to cut you off or anything, but it's been really interesting having you on the show, because not only you gave us a in the room play-by-play run on what happened at Pebble, but so much of what you touched on kind of there in the last couple minutes is a lot of what we talk about on the show about getting the younger generation involved. We always talk about some topic, but we almost always wind up talking about exactly what you've thrown out there, and that's for us, that's a big part of this show. Is we're going to talk about whatever topic is at hand that night, but we don't, again, that no driving gloves motto. We are all pretty open with our feelings about things. It's a kind of a gloves off approach, but it also means that, the topic might go anywhere, as we talked about in the pre-show. It's just, it's refreshing that we kind of keep stumbling upon people that, are in the industry, in the field somewhere of this, automotive, especially vintage automotive field, of whether it's, restoring the cars, museum work, insurance work, whatever portion of this world that you're in, that are attempting to encourage the younger generation through any means to get involved in this. And, also to look at it from a different perspective. I think we've talked about it on the show a couple times. Too many people think that the only way to get the younger generation involved is to force them to work on the cars or, do something, hands-on or physical with the vehicle. But that's not the only way. It's like you said, there were 10, 12, 15-year-old kids standing on the street corners in Monterey and probably down in Carmel and all the different places there around Pebble Beach during that, week of events, taking pictures, making social media posts, oh my God, I saw a Bugatti Veyron or a Chiron or, a McLaren or whatever, whatever's out there. Because one of the big things that, I think all of us understand, and hopefully all of us understand and see, is that as kids, we typically always had either a poster or pictures or something of a car we dreamed of owning or dreamed of seeing in person, or having the opportunity to drive or something like that. And for some of us oddballs, talking about myself here, granted, it was pictures of 1903 Packards and locomobiles and all the horseless carriage, brass era classic car stuff. I was an odd duck. Those dreams led me into a field where cars I read about when I was a kid and dreamt about, I've had the experience of working on, driving, and sharing, as you say, sharing with the public their stories. Granted, they're not my cars; they're cars at museums I've worked at. But those same kids that are standing out on the street corner in Pebble Beach, Monterey, Carmel, all those places, taking those pictures, making those social media posts, those are their posters and their pictures in books and magazines. Now it's all digital, and those kids have their dream cars now. And when they grow up, there's a chance that a good few of those kids are going to be so hooked on that it's going to drive them to figure out a way to either own that car or work on that car or do something that is involved with the automotive field. So I always like to hear those alternate perspectives that some of our guests bring, and I think that was an amazing one you shared, because it's about just respecting what the younger generation is interested in, especially when it draws them to the automobile.
Absolutely. Whatever that gateway is for them to be curious about automobiles or motorcycles or trucks, it doesn't matter, just as long as they show curiosity. I think you just enable that and allow them that exposure. And one thing I haven't mentioned is my wife Ann and I, we're ambassadors for the RPM Foundation. I'm not sure if you guys have spoken to it or are familiar with it, but it's it's a foundation that supports restoration and preservation of the automotive field for car restoration shops, for McPherson College. If there's a student who needs financial aid to go to a McPherson College or another automotive school, if a car club is doing something automotive related with the younger generation to get them engaged, there's a number of things that the RPM Foundation wants to get involved with, and they're another sort of tip of the spear group out there, proactively enabling young people who want to play with cars or get into the car world, find their way. They're very much a recruitment channel to find the kid who wants to work on NASCARs and funnel them to the NASCAR path. Or if there's an engineering student that wants to work for F1, like there's a pathway that they can use through our RPM to get there possibly more quickly, or get them to an internship sooner, and to really test out their theories. Do they like working in that space? So we're not alone. We've got lots of other cool people out there that are working towards helping the next generation. So we just got to continue the good fight.
Yeah, I want to keep wanting to reach out to Diana at RPM and see if we can get her on the show to kind of talk about some of the stuff they do, because that's a continuation of a program that was started many years